Here's a classic case of the wolf regulating the chicken house. Yes, Pam Bondi wants to take away from state bar regulators the ability to investigate for ethical violations lawyers that work in the Department of Justice, including Pam Bondi and other federal lawyers. Right, because in the first time around with Donald Trump, many of those lawyers that worked for Donald Trump went to jail, pled guilty to felonies, were indicted, disbarred, censured, sanctioned, or all of it. And Pam Bondi's like, I got an idea. I'll come up with a new rule. New rules, everybody. I feel like Bill Maher. New rules. If you're a federal lawyer working under me, including me, I'll investigate you. I'll investigate me. We cover this latest crapshoot by Pam Bondi on Legal AF, the podcast. Here's a clip.
All right, Popak, we talked about in the last segment, Bondi, cover-ups, will she be fired? The issue is she runs a large organization. It's called the Department of Justice. Once upon a time, it was both the biggest and the most respected law firm, essentially, in the entire country, if not the world. I would definitely say the world. It was a place where the top law students would want to work. People would leave private practice jobs where they may be making millions of dollars to give back through public service. Working at the Department of Justice, it was a stepping stone frequently to become a federal judge or state court judge. It put you on an incredible career trajectory. Also, the career DOJ lawyers, usually were people of high integrity, of high moral character. And they also had huge amounts of resources. So when you would see the USA on the plaintiff side or on the prosecutorial side, and you were on the other side of the V, as we like to say, on the defendant side, you would say, wow, we're going to be in for a fight, because you never doubted that they had good lawyers with high character, high integrity, even if you thought that their prosecutions were overzealous or you disagreed with them, you never really doubted their ability to function. We now know there has been like close to 9,000 or more DOJ lawyers who have either resigned or fired or have been pushed out. DOJ lawyers staff combined, top talent, top divisions, civil rights divisions, antitrust divisions, portions of their criminal division, crypto enforcement divisions, sex trafficking divisions, gutted. And offices throughout the AUSA offices throughout the country, United States attorneys offices throughout the country, gutted, where they have very limited talent to prosecute, big important cases. We talk about high profile cases a lot, but think about, the cases that are medium profile, or, the cases that the DOJ prosecutes on a day-to-day basis that are not being prosecuted. We see massive errors. We'll talk about in a little bit. You have the DOJ not acknowledging even the most basic fundamental constitutional rights when judges grant habeas petitions saying that the government is holding people unlawfully in detention centers and release them. The DOJ sometimes doesn't follow the orders, frequently recently doesn't follow the orders. Then the judge hauls the DOJ lawyers in, threatens them with contempt. The DOJ lawyers say, I'm sorry, I'm not even really a United States federal prosecutor. I work in JAG. I'm a military lawyer, or I'm an immigration lawyer. I don't know what we're doing. We're understaffed. I need help. We've had lawyers, DOJ lawyers, saying, can you just put me in prison? Hold me in contempt, please. But that's truly happening. But these lawyers are missing deadlines. They're missing, they're lying about the law. They are submitting false declarations. And they're doing those things that we saw, Trump's election denying lawyers do, who got sanctioned and who lost their licenses. And so obviously the DOJ, which is this cauldron of corruption and criminality covering up sex trafficking and the Epstein files, they're not going to, hold their own accountable. But in various states, you have state bar organizations, the state bar, you ever hear of that? And these are the organizations that govern the professional responsibility and ethical conduct of lawyers in different states. And they have jurisdiction to remove people's legal licenses. In our federalist system, you are licensed to practice law, not in the entire nation in the United States. That may be confusing for some of our foreign viewers, but you are licensed in a particular state. You can take different state bar exams, so you can be be licensed in California, New York, Florida, but that means you have to take the bar exams usually in those states. There's a wrinkle on that. Recently, they've introduced uniform exams and made it, but you still have to take portions of other exams and then also pass professional responsibility exams of specific states. So you're licensed only in a state. So as a California lawyer, I can't on my own go into Nevada or go into New York and start practicing law. I would have to have someone vouch for me there. It's a process called pro hac vice. I won't get into that, but I can't practice in other states without the assistance of local lawyers who lend their bar license to my name. Now, one of the ways to hold DOJ lawyers accountable for their ethical breaches, for their misconduct, since the DOJ won't, is through filing bar complaints against these DOJ lawyers. That could happen when people file them, citizens, or more frequently when judges make referrals because of the conduct that's before the court. And a federal judge says, I'm referring you to the state bar because you've missed deadlines so frequently, you've lied to the court, you've engaged in crimes, whatever. And I can refer you to prosecution, but if I refer you to prosecution, that means the DOJ is supposed to prosecute you for criminal contempt. Bondi's not going to do that. So the most we can do now until there's a new DOJ and the statute of limitations on their crimes has not expired, but for now is basically remove their law licenses and let local ethical organizations that run the ethics, like state bar organizations, remove your legal license. And so I'll pass it to you, Popak, but under the guise of federalism, we have the Trump DOJ now essentially saying, well, the supremacy clause of the Constitution, federal preemption reigns supreme. So state bar organizations can't do investigations of any DOJ lawyer, federal, unless we say so. So we're going to do the investigations first, indefinitely, once a DOJ lawyer tells us they're under investigation, and then state bar, you have to stay out because of the supremacy clause of the Constitution. So we want unethical lawyers in the DOJ. I mean, Popak, how sick is that?
The wolf is now regulating the chicken house. Yeah, okay. So you gave a great overview of how you and I have a bar license. And the one little connectivity there that goes to the 10th Amendment, which is everything that's not federal is reserved to the states, is that you can't practice in federal court directly coming out of law school by taking a federal bar exam. You have to have an underlying state bar. Pick one. Any 50 states in the District of Columbia, you got to have a state bar. That's your ticket to sit for a federal bar, either an exam or to be sworn in through because somebody vouches for you, whatever the individual. I've done it all. I've taken tests. I've been sworn in for my federal bars, but you have to have one state bar, and you can't skip a step. If you show up at the federal court and say, I went to an accredited law school and I'm ready to take your federal bar test, they're like, where's your state license? So the states, as you said, regulate appropriately under the 10th Amendment, things like professional licenses. You're not a federal, although some people think they are. You're not a federal lawyer. You're not a federal, you may be a federal practitioner. That may be 100% of your practice is running over to the federal court instead of the state court. I have a mixed practice. I do state and federal work. But that doesn't mean you're a federal bar member only. So the states regulate either through an appellate division, an appellate court, a integrated bar like Florida, the Florida bar. Talk about that in a minute. I'm a member of that one. Or through the Supreme Court of that state. Those are the three different major ways. And it's all about the same as you laid out. You take a multi-state exam, which is like general law around the country. You take a state-specific section. You take an ethics section. Then you've just passed the bar based on the number that you get set by the regulators. Then you got to get past your character and fitness. You got to get admitted into the bar. And the reason it's called a bar for those geeks out there is because literally coming out of old England, out of the Inns of Court and legal England, there was a bar, a wooden bar. And if you were admitted to the bar, you could stand on the other side of it in the well of the court and address the court. Everybody else, was in the courtroom watching. So you're a member of the bar, means you can cross over that line. And still to this day, most courts, federal courts especially, there is a wooden swinging door and bar that I have to walk through and close behind me and sit at a table to address the court. That's why you don't address the court from, pardon me, folks. If I come in like a minute late, I'm coming in through the door in the back. Hey, judge, hey, how you doing? Sorry, I'm late. No. You rush, open that swinging door, get in front of the bar and in your proper place as an officer of the court. Federal judges regulate and state court judges regulate too, because when they observe something that's gone awry in their courtroom, a violation of the rules of professional responsibility or conduct, which are basically about the same in all states, comes from a model rule. They can say, hey, that was not only contempt of my court and my order, violated the bar rule, including a major one, candor to the tribunal. You got to tell the truth. You got to tell the truth to the best of your ability to the judge or arbitrator or whoever that's asking you questions. Okay. You have to be candid and not lie to your opponent as well, and certainly not to your client. All of these things have been the violations of all these things on full display with this Department of Justice under Pam Bondi. Another indicia of Pam Bondi knowing she's on thin ice is trying, before she gets thrown out, to get this new rule passed. Because what they didn't like in the first term is that the first starting team for Donald Trump of lawyers all got fined, sanctioned, censured, disbarred, indicted, and or convicted. And some, all 3 or 4 of those things. So you're talking about Ken Chesborough and Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis and John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani, and the list goes on. Jeffrey Clark. This group all got some version. Even Alina Habba got sanctioned by a federal judge for her shenanigans in private practice. So they don't want that to happen again. And Bondi is forcing, because Trump is too, forcing the Department of Justice assistant U.S. attorneys and U.S. attorneys to take ridiculous positions that are unethical, defiant of court orders, to paraphrase a former senior leader of the Department of Justice, Emil Bovee, now a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge, tell judges to go F themselves. We're not answering their questions. We're deporting people without due process in the middle of the night, whether they like it or not. So she's making them do it, and they've had a complete inability to refill the 6,000 or 7,000 people that have left the Department of Justice. So Bondi publishes, and we missed it. We caught it later, about a week or 2 ago, in the Federal Register, a proposed new rule. New rules. Okay. I feel like I'm, what's his name? Bill Maher. New rule. States can do the investigation, but we can block it and do our own. It'll be the feds investigating themselves. And it, like you said, go on indefinitely. We can do for as long as we want. And while we're doing an investigation, whatever that means, states, you stay out of it. You can't do your thing, even though there's an underlying bar license that you do regulate, but not here. Now, the Florida bar, for instance, took a very interesting position when Pam Bondi had a bar complaint against her brought by the same group that brought the claim against, or the bar charge against Lindsay Halligan, which was Florida bar took the position, which I don't agree with, is while they're in federal practice and working for the federal government, we're not going to investigate. Meaning when they're out, they will. Because Bondi and the rest have another problem. The statute of limitations for things like obstruction of justice is now longer than the administration. In other words, it's a 5-year statute of limitations for most of the crimes, including lying to Congress, that these people are committing before our very eyes. But this term is over in 2028. So the next Department of Justice, I love the sound of that, in 2029 can prosecute all of these people, including Kristi Noem, including Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche or anybody else that obstructed justice or lied to Congress. So I love these. People say, well, these oversight committee hearings, are they really useful? Yes, for many reasons, including the one that I just outlined. So this whole, now the state bars they're all apoplectic, most of them anyway. And they're all going to comment and oppose the rule about this is their right under the 10th Amendment. This is their professional regulation, self-policing, not up to the feds. And whether you want to decide whether they did or didn't commit an ethical violation, that's for you. You want to discipline them from a professional standpoint, but from their bar license standpoint, that's our job. So there's going to be a whole fight over that. But the fact that she's even trying it is remarkable. I do want to say one thing, because you said something earlier that triggered something for me. You said a version of, it's not like we want to be critiquing and criticizing and calling to task Donald Trump, for ratings or whatever. And we have no choice because we're watching an out of control, lawless rogue presidency. We've got to talk about it. And he just continues to do it over and over again. We don't blow smoke or sunshine here. I mean, that is our remit. I caught this doing some other research on something I did a hot take on Legal AF that's up now. Judge Reyes, who's a Biden appointee, who has been attacked, she's a DC federal judge, who's been attacked by the Trump administration time and time again, including them bringing a judicial ethical charge against her, which she got cleared of, related to her case where she ruled that the transgender community can't be drummed out of the military. She just posted on her docket, literally what she calls a shout out to the quality of one assistant U.S. attorney that was before her. And now she ruled against that person, him, but she wanted, and obviously she wanted to contrast his conduct and his behavior with those that are not following his lead and are being defiant and disrespectful of federal courts and misleading them and not being honest to the tribunal. Let me read this to you, Ben, and to our audience. Listen to this posting. Have you ever seen anything like this in your career? February 3rd, the day after she ruled against the government, about 350,000 Haitians who based on her order, will not be deported back to war-torn Haiti, based on a Kristi Noem order, which has now been affirmed, at least for now, at the Court of Appeals. Here's what she wrote. The court thanks all counsel of record for their substantial efforts to date, efforts that have amply aided its work. The court highlights Assistant U.S. Attorney Drummond Y. Sampat. His work has been, in a word, exemplary. In a few more, it's been the very best tradition of assistant U.S. attorneys. Over a 2-day motion hearing, he exhibited mastery of an intricate statutory regime, 3 complex doctrinal areas, and 1,500 pages of an administrative record. And even with the court lobbying endless questions at him, he did so with good humor throughout. The court has not before docketed this type of judicial shout out, her words, but Mr. Sampat's efforts demands no less. So when we see appropriate conduct, behavior, good lawyering, we, like Judge Reyes, will call it out. The fact that we don't do it is not because we're editing and leaving on the cutting room floor really good behavior by the Trump administration that we just don't want to talk about because it gets in the way of our narrative. We don't have a narrative. We're just talking about, at the intersection of law and politics, what is right and what is wrong. And I think that's why people hang out with us, at least on a regular basis, on Legal AF and on the MeidasTouch network.
Right. I mean, covering up a child sex trafficking ring, wrong. Shouldn't be you're a Democrat or Republican. That's wrong. And that needs to be called out. I don't know what needs to be called out more than that. An unlawful war for regime change without even trying to explain it to the American people, and then saying the reason that you did it was because you believed Israel was going to strike first and then Iran was going to strike you next. And then saying, I didn't say that. When we heard it's like the words that you said, Marco Rubio and MAGA Mike Johnson, but not even trying to explain this to the American people or get legal authorization. I mean, I just think objectively, it shouldn't matter what political party you're from. And we should be able to call that out as wrong. I mean, having masked agents roam the streets in military gear, kidnapping, killing, torture, terrorizing, going into these states that have their own kind of state sovereign functions, and invading them. And that's wrong. What we saw with Alex Pretty, Renee Nicole Good, the 40 plus people who died in detention centers as well last year, the nearly a dozen people who have died this year. That's objectively authoritarian conduct. That's bad. We should call that out. And it's not an anti-Trump thing. It's Trump is doing that thing. And I am anti the person who has shredded our Constitution and shredded our rights and shredded, I think the things that actually made America be viewed internationally, as something that's special. I mean, I'll read this to you right now. This is from a foreign minister in India, a foreign secretary of India who also served as an ambassador to the United States in China. Perhaps what unsettles me most is the sense of disbelief. For many of us, the United States was a country we admired deeply. Its institutions, its culture, its ideals. To see such callousness now, such indifference to the human cost of war is profoundly troubling. Power exercised without reflection risks becoming something colder, something stripped of the moral restraint that once gave it legitimacy. And I mean, I think whether you look at the U.S. war posture, how Trump and Hegseth talk about themselves as predators, that the United States is a predator country that dominates and rains down death. I mean, when I hear these words, I'm like, what the hell what is happening here? When you see in domestic policy or domestic life, invasions of our states and our cities. I mean, what the hell is going on here? And, when we started Legal AF many, many years ago, we warned that this could be a reality, and lots of people in our very early days criticized me and Popak and our whole team, and they would say, hyperbolic, and I would get all the fact checks and the this and the that, and saying, stop trying to be so hyperbolic. Why are you saying all of these things? Because we're listening to what's happening. We're showing you the evidence and the data.
Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to, every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And the Legal AF podcast that I founded spawned the Legal AF YouTube channel, which you're now on. Hit the free subscribe button as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.